A story of hard truths and transformative redemption awaits. A narrative where every choice ignites change and every heart learns to forgive. If you crave tales that stir the soul and challenge the status quo, hit that subscribe button now and dive into a journey that will forever alter your view of justice and unity. Samantha Reeves, the newly promoted manager of the Cornerstone convenience store, prided herself on efficiency and control. Every morning, as she straightened the shelves and arranged the displays with precise care, she felt the weight of responsibility, not only for her store but for the reputation of the family that had long governed the town. Her father, Mayor Thomas Reeves, was a well-respected figure known for his fairness and progressive ideals, and Samantha had always believed that his influence would guide her decisions. Yet deep within her, unacknowledged biases and unspoken insecurities sometimes clouded her judgment. On a crisp autumn morning, the store buzzed with its usual mix of locals and travelers. As Samantha reviewed the daily inventory, a young black teen, Marcus Johnson, entered quietly. He wore a faded hoodie and a pair of well-worn sneakers. His presence stirred an uneasy feeling within Samantha that she could not readily explain. The town's recent headlines had whispered of minor disturbances and petty thefts, and Samantha's mind, preoccupied with maintaining order, quickly jumped to conclusions. In a moment that would alter the day's course, Samantha observed Marcus lingering near the high-end electronics display. His gaze shifted furtively as he handled a small, expensive gadget, and her pulse quickened. Without pausing for deeper thought, she dialed the police. "There's someone suspicious in my store," she reported in a clipped tone, her voice betraying a mix of authority and fear. In her mind, the call was a means to protect the store and preserve the Reeves name. Moments later, flashing blue lights and the sound of sirens announced the arrival of law enforcement. Marcus, startled and confused, raised his hands as officers entered the store. Samantha watched from behind her counter, a knot of tension forming in her stomach. As the officers questioned him, a silence fell over the store, punctuated only by the staccato click of the police radios and the low murmurs of onlookers. For Marcus, the day had turned from a quiet errand into a nightmare. The officers' stern faces and the accusatory glances of onlookers made him feel isolated and misunderstood. In that charged moment, Samantha's decision, which she believed was protecting her livelihood, ignited a spark that threatened to engulf the community in a debate over fairness, prejudice, and accountability. Little did she know that the arrival of her father, the mayor, would soon force her to confront the consequences of her actions in ways she never imagined. The store's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as the police process unfolded. Marcus, now sitting on a nearby bench outside the store, clutched his backpack tightly while his eyes darted between the officers and the anxious crowd that had gathered. Samantha hovered near the entrance, her hands trembling as she watched the scene escalate. Every whispered comment from the customers, every disapproving stare, hammered home the gravity of her rash decision. News of the incident spread quickly through the small town. By mid-morning, local social media channels were already abuzz with debates and angry hashtags. Neighbors and regular customers, many of whom knew Marcus and his family personally, expressed their shock and dismay at what they saw as an unjust act. For some, Samantha's action was an echo of long-standing prejudices. For others, it was a regrettable overreaction fueled by fear. Inside the store, Samantha wrestled with a growing sense of dread. She had always prided herself on professionalism, yet the situation was spiraling into a public relations crisis before her very eyes. When a longtime employee, Jenna, softly confronted her in the back office, urging her to reconsider her actions, Samantha's voice wavered. I just wanted to keep the store safe," she muttered, struggling to reconcile her intentions with the fallout unfolding around her. As if drawn by fate, the matter escalated when a car pulled up outside, a sleek sedan that was unmistakable to the townspeople. Mayor Thomas Reeves had arrived. Known for his calm demeanor and deep commitment to justice, the mayor stepped out with a measured pace, his eyes scanning the scene with concern and disappointment. His presence was both reassuring and intimidating, a reminder of the values he had long championed and the high standard expected of his family. The mayor's arrival did not bring immediate solace, however. Instead, whispers grew louder among the onlookers. Many knew that Samantha, his daughter, had taken the action that now stood in stark contrast to his legacy. In that instant, the public drama took on a new dimension, one that was personal and politically charged. Thomas approached the store, and as he entered, the charged atmosphere seemed to pause, awaiting his words. The air grew thick with anticipation and the heavy burden of history. In the quiet that followed, Mayor Reeves addressed the gathered crowd outside the store. His voice, calm yet firm, expressed deep regret that such a misunderstanding had occurred under his family's roof. Today, we are reminded that every action, no matter how well-intentioned, can have unintended consequences, he said. His eyes, weary with the weight of public service, locked onto Samantha's. In that silent exchange, she felt the sting of disappointment, a mixture of paternal love and public accountability. Inside, Samantha's mind raced as she tried to justify her actions. Memories of her own troubled youth, marred by the sting of rejection and fear of the unknown, blurred into the present moment. She recalled the days when her parents' words had spoken of tolerance and empathy, lessons that now felt like distant echoes. Had she truly embodied the values of justice and compassion that her father had so long preached? The question gnawed at her, leaving her isolated in her internal turmoil. Meanwhile, Marcus, now sitting on a curb outside the store, grappled with a mix of relief and humiliation. His eyes, though wide with apprehension, shone with the resilience of youth. He knew his community, his family and friends, would rally to his defense, and yet the sting of the incident had already left its mark. His mother had called him earlier that day, urging him to stay calm and trust that truth would eventually prevail. Even as he sat there, lost in thought, a quiet determination began to emerge. As the police completed their initial inquiries, Mayor Reeves privately requested a meeting with Samantha. In the quiet office behind the store, away from prying eyes and harsh judgments, father and daughter sat facing each other. Thomas's tone was gentle but unwavering. "Samantha, our actions reflect who we are, and today's events have shaken me to the core. I know you believed you were protecting our community, but protecting it means ensuring fairness and respect for every individual." His words were measured, laden with disappointment, but also hope, a hope that his daughter could learn and grow from this painful moment. Samantha's eyes filled with tears as she listened. The conflict inside her was no longer just about a single incident. It had become a mirror reflecting the complexities of bias, power, and redemption. In that quiet room, the first seeds of change were planted. Samantha vowed silently that she would come to understand her misjudgment, not merely for the sake of her father's legacy, but for the dignity of every person in her community. The conversation that followed was a long, heartfelt dialogue about responsibility, history, and the need for introspection. It was a turning point, one that set the stage for a journey of personal redemption and community healing. By midday, news of the incident had spread far beyond the small town. Local news outlets, and even regional networks, began covering the story with an intensity that unsettled Samantha. Headlines flashed across television screens and online platforms, capturing the nation's attention. Public opinion was polarized. Some sympathized with Samantha's attempt to maintain order, while others decried the act as an overt display of prejudice. The reverberations of her decision rippled outward, igniting heated debates in town halls, cafes, and social media threads. Community meetings were hastily organized, where voices both familiar and new called for accountability and understanding. Marcus's family, well respected in the neighborhood for their community involvement, found themselves thrust into the spotlight. They received letters of support alongside messages of condemnation. The local civil rights leader, Mr. Franklin, took up the cause and demanded that the town address the undercurrents of discrimination that had long festered beneath the surface. His passionate speeches resonated with many, urging a re-examination of long-held beliefs and practices. Meanwhile, Mayor Reeves faced mounting pressure to restore trust in his leadership. In public statements, he expressed remorse over the incident, emphasizing that the values of equality and justice were non-negotiable. His speech, delivered at an impromptu press conference in front of the store, was measured and heartfelt. "We must not let a single moment define our collective future," he declared, urging the community to come together in dialogue and reflection. His words, however, did little to quell the anger and disappointment felt by many, especially among those who had personally experienced the sting of injustice. Inside the Reeves residence later that evening, Samantha found herself isolated in her room, overwhelmed by regret and self-reproach. The weight of the day's events pressed upon her like a suffocating shroud. Every critical comment and every disapproving glance replayed in her mind. She began to see that her actions, however impulsive they might have been, had set off a chain reaction that threatened to tear apart the fabric of a community that had long prided itself on unity. The sound of distant voices and the hum of city traffic outside her window were a constant reminder that the effects of her actions were not confined to the walls of the store. They had become a mirror reflecting the deeper societal issues of fear, prejudice, and misunderstanding. In that lonely night, Samantha resolved to embark on a journey of self-discovery and reconciliation. She knew that to truly atone, she would need to face the painful truths about her own biases and work to mend the rift she had helped widen. It was a quiet, painful commitment, one born not out of public pressure but from a deep desire to make things right. The next morning, the town awoke to a charged atmosphere. In a bid to bridge the widening divide, Mayor Reeves announced a community forum to address the incident and its broader implications. The forum was to be held in the town's historic civic center, a place imbued with memories of past triumphs and struggles. Citizens from all walks of life were invited to share their thoughts, and the event quickly became a symbol of the town's commitment to healing and unity. Samantha, still reeling from the previous day's events, hesitated at the thought of facing the community. Yet, driven by the need to atone and learn, she resolved to attend. Arriving at the civic center, she was struck by the sight of familiar faces mixed with strangers whose eyes burned with questions and quiet anger. The room, filled with murmurs of discontent and hope, embodied the town's longing for genuine change. At the podium, Mayor Reeves introduced a series of speakers, community leaders, educators, and civil rights advocates who were all eager to shed light on systemic issues and personal accountability. When Mr. Franklin took the stage, his impassioned words about discrimination and the importance of confronting uncomfortable truths left the audience silent with introspection. "We cannot heal until we acknowledge the wounds," he declared, his voice resonating with a deep, unwavering conviction. For Samantha, each word felt like a mirror reflecting her own failures. During a break in the session, she sought out Mr. Franklin, hoping to learn more about how she could make amends. Their conversation was both sobering and enlightening. Mr. Franklin encouraged her to listen, to really listen, to the voices of those who had been silenced by prejudice. "It's not enough to simply say you're sorry," he insisted. "You must commit to understanding and changing the narrative." His words struck a chord deep within her, igniting a spark of resolve to transform remorse into action. Over the following days, Samantha immersed herself in volunteer work and community outreach programs. She visited local schools, engaging in candid discussions about diversity and tolerance, and she spent time with Marcus's family, seeking to understand their perspective. These interactions, though fraught with initial tension, gradually began to chip away at the walls of mistrust. Samantha listened intently to stories of discrimination, pain, and hope, each narrative a lesson in empathy that forced her to confront the prejudices she had long ignored. At the same time, Marcus, despite the trauma of that fateful day, emerged as a quiet beacon of strength in his community. His calm demeanor and thoughtful insights during community dialogues earned him respect and support. While many saw him solely as a victim, those who truly knew him recognized a resilience that was both inspiring and transformative. His willingness to speak openly about his experiences not only humanized the debate, but also served as a catalyst for change in the hearts of those willing to listen. Samantha's journey of redemption was not a quick fix. It was a gradual, often painful process of unlearning ingrained biases and rebuilding trust. Yet each small act of kindness, each conversation that bridged old divides, reminded her that true change was possible. In the quiet moments of reflection that followed each day's work, she began to see that the path to atonement was not about erasing the past, but about building a future where every person was valued and respected. Her transformation, while still in its infancy, promised hope for a community determined to move forward together. As autumn deepened and leaves turned gold, the town continued to grapple with the aftermath of that tumultuous day. The incident at Cornerstone Convenience had become more than a local controversy. It was a catalyst for a broader conversation about legacy, responsibility, and the power of personal transformation. Mayor Reeves, steadfast in his commitment to justice, found himself navigating a delicate balance between his public duties and the private pain of seeing his daughter struggle with the consequences of her actions. Late one evening, after a long day of community outreach and meetings, Mayor Reeves sat alone in his study. Surrounded by family portraits and mementos of a storied political career, he reflected on the heavy burden of legacy. His own rise to prominence had been built on ideals of equality and service, yet the recent events threatened to tarnish not only his reputation, but also the future his family had long hoped to secure. He recalled the many times he had counseled Samantha to lead with both firmness and compassion, and now, as he faced the fallout of her misjudgment, he wondered if the lessons had truly taken root. The next morning, Samantha visited her father's study. Their conversation was quiet at first, filled with long silences that spoke of shared sorrow and unspoken regret. "I feel as though I've betrayed everything we stand for," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas reached out, placing a steady hand on hers. "We all stumble, Samantha," he said, his tone gentle but resolute. "What matters is how we rise afterward. The legacy we leave behind is not measured solely by our successes, but by our capacity for growth and change." Inspired by her father's words, Samantha resolved to take a more proactive role in bridging the gap between different communities. She began organizing interfaith and intercultural dialogues at the local community center, inviting residents to share their experiences and learn from one another. These sessions, though challenging, fostered a spirit of unity that had long been absent in the town. Stories of personal hardship and triumph were exchanged in an atmosphere of mutual respect, slowly erasing the lines that had once divided them. During one particularly memorable session, Samantha found herself face-to-face with an elderly Black woman named Mrs. Davis, who recounted decades of discrimination and the small victories that had sustained her through it all. The conversation moved Samantha to tears as she listened to the woman's recollections of loss, resilience, and the quiet power of community solidarity. "I have seen the worst of what this town can offer, but also the best," Mrs. Davis said softly, her eyes shining with determination. "It is in our willingness to change that we find hope." As the weeks turned into months, the community's transformation began to take shape. Local schools incorporated discussions on tolerance and history into their curricula, while the town council, inspired by the renewed spirit of dialogue, worked on initiatives to ensure greater inclusivity in local governance. Samantha's efforts were not without setbacks. Moments of lingering mistrust and resistance surfaced time and again, but each challenge reaffirmed her commitment to the cause. In private moments, Samantha reflected on the irony that the very act that had sparked so much pain had also opened a door to healing. The regret that had once gnawed at her conscience was slowly being replaced by a cautious hope, a belief that even deep wounds could lead to a more compassionate future. Her father's steady guidance, coupled with the resilience of those around her, became the foundation on which she rebuilt not only her own character, but also the community's faith in progress. The town's healing journey was punctuated by moments of unexpected collaboration. One such moment came when Samantha received an invitation from an influential local activist, Julian Carter, whose reputation for bridging divides was well known. Julian had witnessed the incident and the ensuing public reaction with a measured detachment, yet his heart burned for justice. He believed that true reconciliation required allies from all sides, and he saw in Samantha not an enemy, but a partner capable of change. At a small, roundtable meeting in the back room of a neighborhood cafe, Julian and several community leaders gathered to discuss strategies for addressing systemic prejudice. Initially, there was palpable tension in the room. Many remembered the pain inflicted by Samantha's decision, and skepticism lingered. But as the conversation unfolded, Julian made a heartfelt appeal. "We are all part of this community," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "If we choose to work together, we can transform this incident into a turning point, a moment when we all learn that our differences make us stronger rather than weaker." Samantha listened intently as Julian outlined plans for community projects that would bring together youth from diverse backgrounds. He proposed mentorship programs, cultural exchange events, and volunteer initiatives that aimed to celebrate the town's rich tapestry of traditions. While some remained cautious, Samantha found herself inspired by his vision. In that room, amidst the clamor of passionate voices, she recognized an opportunity to demonstrate genuine remorse and commitment to change. Over the following weeks, Samantha and Julian forged an unlikely alliance. They coordinated events that not only highlighted the town's diversity, but also provided platforms for meaningful dialogue. One particularly impactful event was a collaborative mural project on a once-abandoned wall near the town center. Residents, young and old, gathered to paint images that represented unity, struggle, and hope. As vibrant colors replaced the drab facade, the mural became a living testament to the community's shared aspirations, a visual symbol of reconciliation emerging from the ruins of discord. For Samantha, each brushstroke on that wall symbolized a step away from the guilt of her past and toward a future defined by understanding. Marcus, whose presence had become emblematic of the change the town desperately needed, even contributed a design element that celebrated his heritage. His involvement lent authenticity to the project, and his quiet leadership resonated with many who had once felt marginalized. As the mural neared completion, the story of that fateful morning transformed into something far richer. It was no longer just about a misguided call to the police. It had become a catalyst for an evolving dialogue about identity, justice, and the possibility of redemption. In the wake of the public outcry, even those who had been staunchly opposed to Samantha's actions began to acknowledge the courage it took to admit mistakes and work for change. The unlikely alliance between Samantha and Julian symbolized more than a personal reconciliation. It was a microcosm of what the entire community could achieve when hearts and minds united for a common cause. As the mural's final colors dried in the autumn sun, it stood as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the deepest divisions could be healed through dialogue, empathy, and the courage to start anew. In the months that followed, the town's atmosphere shifted gradually. The community forum and collaborative projects had opened channels of communication that once seemed permanently sealed by suspicion and prejudice. Samantha, determined to make a lasting difference, embarked on a series of outreach initiatives aimed at dismantling the invisible barriers that had divided the town for generations. She began by partnering with local schools and community centers, organizing workshops and seminars focused on the history of racial inequality and the importance of diversity. These sessions were designed not only to educate, but also to foster genuine connections between individuals from different backgrounds. Samantha invited guest speakers, including civil rights activists, educators, and even individuals who had once harbored prejudices but had transformed through personal experience. Each session was a step toward understanding, a reminder that acknowledging past wrongs was the only way to build a more inclusive future. One workshop, held in a modest community hall, saw Samantha speaking candidly about her own journey. With a steady voice and unguarded vulnerability, she recounted the events of that fateful day and the painful realization of her mistake. "I called the police without thinking, without truly seeing you," she said, addressing a diverse group of residents whose eyes were fixed on her. "I acted out of fear and bias, and I deeply regret the harm that caused." Her apology was met with a mixture of skepticism and cautious optimism. Some faces remained stoic, while others softened with empathy. The vulnerability in her words resonated with those who had long felt unseen. Marcus, too, found his voice during these meetings. Invited to share his perspective, he spoke of the humiliation and fear he had experienced, but also of the resilience that had emerged in the aftermath. "I was scared," he admitted, his tone steady but laced with the weight of his memories. "But I'm not defined by that moment. I'm here today because I believe in the possibility of change." His words, delivered with the quiet authority of one who had endured adversity, struck a chord with the audience. Many saw in him the embodiment of a new generation determined to rewrite old narratives. In parallel, local businesses and organizations began to reflect on their practices and policies. Under the influence of the renewed community spirit, initiatives were launched to promote diversity in hiring, and to create safe spaces for open discussion about race and identity. The once silent acknowledgement of systemic biases was now a topic of regular conversation, a necessary discomfort that promised to lead to lasting change. Samantha herself attended numerous community gatherings, listening more than speaking. She realized that transformation was not a solo journey, but a collective endeavor. Each conversation, every shared meal, and every community event was a brick in the foundation of a more just society. With every passing day, she felt the heavy weight of her past actions lighten, replaced by the steady rhythm of communal progress. Despite the challenges that still lay ahead, the town had taken its first true steps toward reconciliation. The barriers that had long divided neighbors were slowly being dismantled, piece by piece, through the power of empathy and understanding. In breaking down those walls, Samantha and her community discovered that the path to healing was paved not with grand gestures, but with honest conversations and the willingness to listen, to truly listen, to one another's stories. The transformation in town continued to gather momentum. As the months wore on, the community found itself engaged in an ongoing conversation about justice, equality, and the importance of accountability. The dialogue extended beyond formal meetings and workshops into everyday interactions on street corners, in cafes, and during family dinners. The incident at Cornerstone Convenience had, in a painful twist of fate, sparked a movement that brought the issues of prejudice and misunderstanding into the open for everyone to confront. Mayor Reeves, ever the steady presence, worked tirelessly to facilitate these conversations. He established a dedicated committee tasked with monitoring and addressing issues of discrimination in town, inviting representatives from every community to join. Under his leadership, the committee organized town hall sessions where citizens could speak candidly about their experiences and hopes for the future. These sessions, though sometimes heated, became a vital outlet for the collective pain and a wellspring of new ideas for reconciliation. Samantha took on a new role as well. No longer defined solely by her mistake, she became an advocate for transparency and reform within the local business community. She arranged for regular training sessions on cultural competency for her staff and collaborated with other local entrepreneurs to create an ethics charter for business practices that emphasized fairness and inclusivity. Her transformation was not instantaneous, and she faced moments of doubt and regret. But with every step forward, she gained a little more confidence in her ability to lead by example. Marcus, whose resilience had become a symbol of hope for many, also stepped into a leadership role. Encouraged by community mentors and supported by his family, he helped organize youth forums where teenagers and young adults could discuss issues affecting them, be it racial bias, economic inequality, or the struggle for self-identity. His calm, measured tone and the clarity of his vision for the future inspired many. In these forums, he emphasized that the future of the town depended on the willingness of its people to listen to one another and to acknowledge that everyone, regardless of their background, deserved respect and dignity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the town held a special candlelight vigil in the park, a symbolic gesture of unity and remembrance. Residents gathered in silence, each holding a candle as a reminder of the light that could overcome even the deepest shadows. In that quiet moment, the divisions of the past seemed to melt away, replaced by a shared resolve to build a better future. The vigil was not just about remembering the hurt of yesterday, but also about celebrating the promise of tomorrow. As the town continued its slow, steady march toward healing, conversations about justice and accountability began to influence other aspects of community life. Schools revised their curricula to include more comprehensive histories of the region, and local artists were commissioned to create public artworks that reflected the town's evolving identity. These creative expressions served as both a tribute to the struggles of the past and a declaration of hope for the future. In this new era of open dialogue, even the most entrenched views were challenged. Neighbors who had once avoided difficult topics now found themselves engaged in conversations that were as uncomfortable as they were necessary. It was a process of unlearning old habits and embracing a more inclusive vision of community, a vision in which every voice had value and every person was seen for who they truly were. Despite the progress, there remained moments when the scars of the past were impossible to ignore. One chilly winter afternoon, as snow began to blanket the quiet streets, Samantha arranged a private meeting with Marcus and his family at a local community center. It was time for a face-to-face apology, one that would carry the weight of genuine remorse and the promise of change. In a modest meeting room with large windows that framed the gray sky, Samantha sat across from Marcus's mother, Mrs. Johnson, and a few close relatives. The air was heavy with emotion, and every pause in the conversation seemed laden with unspoken memories. Samantha began, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "I was wrong," she said softly, her eyes glistening with tears. "I acted out of fear and prejudice, and I hurt you and your family in ways I can only begin to understand." Mrs. Johnson regarded her with a mixture of sadness and cautious hope. "Apologies are easy, but healing is a journey," she replied. "We must see actions that match your words." Marcus, silent until then, finally spoke with a quiet firmness that belied his years. "I appreciate that you're trying, but trust is earned over time," he said. His voice, calm yet resolute, carried the weight of experiences that had taught him to be wary of promises unfulfilled. The meeting continued for hours, with Samantha listening intently to stories of everyday injustices and painful memories that had shaped the Johnson family's perspective. In return, she shared her own journey of regret and the steps she was taking to learn and grow. The conversation was raw and honest, a crucible in which old wounds were acknowledged and the first tentative steps toward healing were taken. Outside, word of the private meeting spread quietly through the community. Many saw it as a courageous act, one that, while not erasing the past, offered a glimmer of hope for the future. For Samantha, the meeting was a turning point. It reinforced her belief that true redemption required consistent, everyday actions that honored the dignity of every person. In the days that followed, Samantha doubled her efforts to create opportunities for genuine dialogue. She initiated a series of community listening circles where residents could share their experiences without fear of judgment. These sessions became a safe space for healing, fostering an environment where even the most painful truths could be spoken openly. The burden of her past actions, though still heavy, was slowly being transformed into a commitment to build bridges across divides. The act of apologizing was not a moment of final absolution, but rather the beginning of a long process of reconciliation. Every sincere conversation, every small act of kindness, chipped away at the walls that had once seemed impenetrable. In that quiet winter afternoon, amidst the soft falling snow, Samantha realized that while the journey toward forgiveness was fraught with challenges, it was also filled with the promise of renewal. As winter thawed into the hopeful light of spring, the town's transformation took on a renewed vigor. The shared experiences of the past months had forged connections that transcended old divisions. Inspired by the growing sense of community, Mayor Reeves announced an ambitious plan, a new cultural center dedicated to celebrating diversity and fostering dialogue across all segments of society. The center, to be built in the heart of town, would serve as a living monument to the community's commitment to unity, understanding, and progress. Samantha was given a central role in the planning committee for the center. Her journey from misjudgment to redemption had not gone unnoticed, and her efforts to mend the fractures in the community were seen as emblematic of the larger change taking place. At committee meetings held in the town hall, she collaborated with educators, artists, and local leaders to design a space that was both welcoming and inspiring. The proposed center would host art exhibitions, cultural events, educational programs, and forums for discussing issues of race, justice, and identity. It was to be a place where the town's collective history, painful and triumphant alike, could be shared and celebrated. Marcus, now emerging as a young community leader, contributed his own ideas to the project. He envisioned a mural-lined corridor that told the story of the town's struggles and its eventual triumph over division, a narrative that captured both the sorrow of past mistakes and the hope of a more inclusive future. His creative input, combined with the technical expertise of local architects, began to shape a vision that resonated with every resident. As the center's blueprint took shape, community members volunteered their time and resources, pooling their skills to bring the project to life. Fundraising events, charity auctions, and local art shows helped generate the necessary support, both financial and moral. The sense of shared purpose was palpable, and even those who had once been wary of change found themselves embracing the promise of this new chapter. Mayor Reeves, speaking at a public ceremony to break ground for the center, reminded the town of the lessons learned through adversity. "We are more than the sum of our mistakes," he declared. "Our strength lies in our willingness to listen, learn, and grow together." His words, imbued with hope and determination, were met with resounding applause from an audience that had seen firsthand the transformative power of accountability and compassion. In the months that followed, construction of the cultural center progressed steadily. The once empty lot at the town's center began to fill with the sounds of progress, the clatter of construction, the hum of community meetings, and the laughter of children playing nearby. Samantha continued to play a key role, her renewed purpose guiding her as she worked to ensure that the center would become a sanctuary for dialogue and healing. For Marcus, the project was deeply personal. It represented not only a space for communal celebration, but also a tangible sign that the community was ready to confront its past and embrace a future defined by mutual respect. His involvement lent credibility to the project, bridging gaps between generations and different cultural backgrounds. In every board meeting, every design session, and every community event linked to the center, the legacy of that fateful day was acknowledged, not as a stain to be erased, but as a lesson that paved the way for change. The cultural center, slowly rising from the ground, promised a new vision for tomorrow, a tomorrow in which every voice, every story, and every individual could contribute to a shared narrative of progress and healing. By early summer, the cultural center was complete, a testament to a community that had learned to find beauty in its scars and strength in its diversity. On the day of the grand opening, the town gathered in the center's courtyard, a vibrant mosaic of colors, cultures, and shared dreams. The building itself, with its modern design interwoven with historical motifs, stood as a symbol of transformation, a place where old wounds could be healed through art, dialogue, and understanding. Inside the center, exhibits showcased stories of the town's history, from moments of deep pain to instances of profound courage. One wall featured photographs and testimonies from residents who had been affected by discrimination and bias, while another celebrated the contributions of those who had dedicated themselves to fostering change. Amidst this celebration of resilience, Samantha and Marcus found themselves side by side, representing both the mistakes of the past and the promise of a reconciled future. At the opening ceremony, Mayor Reeves delivered an address that captured the spirit of the day. "This center is not just a building," he declared. "It is a living reminder that our community's strength lies in our ability to confront our past, learn from it, and emerge stronger together." His voice, filled with pride and tempered by humility, resonated with every person present. The crowd listened in silence, each individual reflecting on their own journey toward understanding and unity. In a quiet moment during the reception, Samantha and Marcus spoke privately. Their conversation was marked by mutual respect and a shared commitment to ensuring that the lessons of yesterday would guide the future. "I have come to realize that forgiveness starts with ourselves," Samantha said softly. "We must be willing to acknowledge our imperfections and work tirelessly to mend the fractures we have created." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Change is never easy," he replied. "But when we open our hearts to one another, even the deepest divisions can give way to a new dawn." The day unfolded with art performances, music, and heartfelt exchanges among community members. The mural that Marcus had helped design was unveiled amid cheers, its vibrant imagery capturing the struggle and eventual triumph over injustice. Children ran freely through the courtyard, their laughter mingling with the soft strains of a local choir, singing a song of hope and renewal. Every face in the crowd bore the marks of a community reborn, a community that had endured pain and emerged with a stronger, more inclusive identity. As the sun set on that historic day, casting a warm, golden glow over the center, the town felt a collective sense of healing. The cultural center was more than a physical space. It was a beacon of possibility, a promise that even in the aftermath of regret and misunderstanding, there lay a path to reconciliation and growth. Samantha, once haunted by the repercussions of her actions, now felt the stirrings of redemption. She had learned that change was not instantaneous, but a continuous journey of self-reflection, accountability, and empathy. In that serene twilight, as the community slowly dispersed with hearts lighter than before, the legacy of that fateful morning transformed from a source of division into a foundation for unity. The story of the store manager, the black teen, and a town divided by fear had evolved into a narrative of hope, a narrative in which every person had a part to play in forging a future defined by justice, compassion, and the unwavering belief that reconciliation was possible. In the months and years that followed, the incident that once threatened to shatter a community became a catalyst for enduring change. Samantha Reeves continued to dedicate herself to community service, using her painful past as a source of motivation to advocate for equity and understanding. The Cornerstone convenience store, once the stage for a regrettable mistake, became a symbol of transformation and accountability. Under new management practices and guided by the lessons learned, it evolved into a space where every customer was welcomed without judgment, a small but powerful reflection of the town's broader shift toward inclusivity. Mayor Reeves's legacy was forever redefined. His steadfast commitment to justice, combined with his willingness to confront difficult truths within his own family, set a precedent for future leaders in the community. The Reeves family, once marked by the shadows of past errors, embraced their role as agents of positive change, becoming living proof that even deep-seated biases could be overcome through courage and reflection. Marcus Johnson grew into a respected young man and community leader, his resilience serving as an inspiration to his peers. His contributions to the cultural center and ongoing dialogues about race and identity underscored the truth that every challenge could be transformed into an opportunity for growth. Through his quiet determination and visionary ideas, Marcus helped shape a town that celebrated diversity as its greatest strength. The cultural center stood as an enduring monument, a physical and symbolic reminder that unity was possible even in the face of past mistakes. Its halls echoed with the voices of those who had once been silenced, and its vibrant murals and exhibits told a story of struggle, reconciliation, and hope. For the community, the center was more than just a building. It was a promise that the future would be written by those willing to learn from yesterday's missteps and work together toward a brighter, more inclusive tomorrow. As the town moved forward, the legacy of that fateful day was woven into a larger tapestry of collective healing. The story of Samantha, Marcus, and the community that emerged from conflict became a lesson passed down to future generations, a reminder that redemption, though often hard-won, was always within reach. In every conversation, every act of kindness, and every bold step toward reform, the spirit of reconciliation lived on. Thus, with the dawn of each new day, the community embraced its renewed identity. A story once defined by division now blossomed into one of unity and hope, a story that would inspire countless others to believe in the possibility of change and in the enduring power of forgiveness. A new chapter had begun, one in which every voice mattered and every heart was given the chance to heal. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Your support means everything and helps bring more powerful stories to life. See you in the next one.